everybody who's connected. Apologies if we have any technical difficulties. This is our first live stream like this. And we really appreciate, again, your interest in Botkit Studio, and we hope that this is really useful. I'm just going to dive in. So thank you guys and hopefully ladies for joining us today for this demo and walkthrough of the features of our brand new bot authoring and control system, Botkit Studio. All of you, I'm sure, are familiar with Botkit already, our open source library for building bots. Botkit Studio is a set of power tools that lives alongside the coding tools of Botkit and gives you additional features that we have found in our jobs of making bots and managing bots and operating bots at a large scale. We found these features to be really, really useful and, in fact, in many ways critical to the operation of our bots on a day-to-day basis. So I'm going to start with just a very high walkthrough of Botkit Studio, and then we'll get into the details of how to use some of these tools. So once you sign up for Botkit Studio at studio.botkit.ai, you will get a dashboard of all of the bots in your account. And now you can have as many bots as you want in your account. Each one of these represents a set of scripts and integrations that combine with your Botkit code to create a real bot that lives out on a messaging platform. You might have multiple bots because you have a dev version of your bot and a staging version of your bot and a production version of your bot, or you might have like multiple different bots in the same account, either way. I'm going to click into my demo bot here. And now you will see the bot view of Botkit Studio. So all of these tabs pertain to this specific demo bot. The default view here is the script interface. This is like a content management system for all of the conversations and dialogue that your bot will perform during its life. We'll come back to this. We also have a message console, which will collect the messages that are sent to your bot and display them here along with the action that was taken by your bot, if any action was taken. So I can show you this live really quick. I'm going to go over to my bot here in Slack and say howdy to it. And you will see back here in the console that that message is displayed immediately and that triggered no action. So that's a very useful tool for keeping an eye on what's going on in your bot. We also have usage statistics that, in addition to telling you how many users or teams interacted with your bot, also breaks down the Botkit Studio functionality that was accessed. So you can actually drill down to see each of the scripts, how many times they were run, whether those scripts ended in a successful interaction or not, and a lot of other useful information about that kind of behavior. And then we have an integrations tab. And right now, the main integration beyond getting your API credentials is a hosting tab. So Botkit Studio is a development tool and an API, but we do not currently provide hosting for your bot because we think that bot developers should maintain their own connection to the networks, the messaging networks. We think that bot developers should own their own network traffic and message traffic and manage their own user data. So we make it as easy as we possibly can for you to host your own bot on your own hardware. Particularly easy is this glitch option. Clicking this will create a fully ready to run Botkit application that is very, very easy to edit. And I'm going to switch over to my glitch tab here. So once you click that button, you're going to get an application with all of the code that you need to actually connect to Slack, send and receive messages, and actually build plugins for Botkit Studio really, really easily. So that's super, super handy. So I've gone through all of those steps already now with my bot, and I have this sample bot in my channel here called Xenomorph. So I'm going to really quickly switch to this, this demo channel here. And the first thing I'm going to show you is how you can use Botkit Studio to just power simple interactions that don't have any like real code behind them, but are more about like controlling the dialogue that your bot uses. So we're going to start with what happens when a bot is actually invited to a channel in Slack. Now, a lot of you will probably know that Botkit throws an event when this happens already, which is called bot channel join. And you can handle that with normal Botkit code, which is demonstrated right here, right? So controller.on bot channel join. We're going to fire this callback function. So what's different here is instead of the old way, before Studio, you might actually program the response directly here in the event handler. Instead, we're going to make a call to Studio's APIs. And what that API call is going to do is go to the Studio interface and pull down a script and turn that script into a conversation to be conducted with the user. So you can see here using Studio controller.studio.run, which is a function that's built into Botkit. I'm going to load the channel join script and execute that. So let me just quickly click over to the Botkit Studio interface and go to that channel join script, and you'll see that inside the dialog authoring system, you have an interface that is very similar to a messaging client in its appearance. On the left here, you have a message or a list of messages, and when I click on that message, I can see the properties that are available for me to edit. So this is just a single message that is going to be sent when a user invites a bot to the channel, and it's going to say, "Hey, this robot is here for you." So let's do that right now. Here comes the bot. And our message did not fire. Awesome live demos. Always good. Okay, well, we're going to skip that demo for a little bit because I'm not sure why that didn't work, and we'll just quickly show another example here, the same kind of thing. So one of the things that bots always have to do is respond when somebody says hello to them. You know, it's a common thing that happens when people start interacting with a bot. So the same kind of thing applies here, right? So I'm going to say hello to my bot. Invite Xenomorph, okay. I know how to use Slack, I promise. And we'll say hello. Great, so this is the hello script, customize me. So what just happened is that the bot received the message hello, and it sent it over to Botkit Studio to be interpreted. And the phrase hello matched a trigger that was set up for this script, right? So you can see right away, there's a string trigger called hello that causes this script to happen. And the bot responded with the phrase that was set up in the CMS. Now, we can go, one of the really, really cool things about Botkit Studio is that you can actually edit these scripts and without any changes to the code or rebooting your bot, immediately see new dialogue appear in your bot. So let's just change this really quick. Hello, I'm your bot. I am here to help you. And we're going to save that and go back to Slack and say hello again. And you'll see that change happened live, and I can immediately see the changes reflected in Slack in my live bot. Super, super cool. So that's just like a basic use of content. So as I was trying to demonstrate earlier, we have the channel joining. We have events like onboarding. We have events and functionality like help that are primarily content driven, and you can create these kind of features using Botkit Studio without adding any code to your actual Botkit app. All you have to do is pass these messages through the Botkit trigger API, and these behaviors will be added automatically to your bot. So that's the sort of super basic use of this. Let me just show you another example that takes one step more complicated. Here is a help system. Now this is based on code and example scripts that are included in your Botkit Studio account when you create a bot. So you'll have a script like this already in your starter kit and in your Go mix. So let's try this out. I want to get help from my bot, and so I'm going to trigger a very basic help script. And in the default thread, as you can see here, we have like a table of contents for that help command. And each command that is available is a little Slack attachment. So let's take a look at what that looks like in here. So we have our text message, and then each one of these little boxes is a Slack attachment. And you have full access to all of the elements that are part of a Slack attachment. You can set author, footer, and images, and all sorts of fields and things like that. And you can also add buttons to your cards, which is really cool, and I'm going to come back to that in a second. So when I say help, just like when I said hello, the message gets sent over to Botkit Studio. It identifies this as a request for help, just based on the simple inclusion of the word help, and it starts the default thread and it sends this message. So what if you need a little bit more help, right? Like there's something more complicated that you want to explain. You have a subtopic. So this is one of the ways to use threads. So threads in Botkit Studio can be thought of as like elements of an interaction that you want to reference separately. I was just having a discussion with one of my teammates earlier. Like I think one of the ways to think about this is like you have a thread that would be like the web form, and then you have a thread that would be like the submission action or the results page. So you can kind of think of them as views in your application that are going to be woven together into the final experience. So in this case, again, we're just sort of dealing with very basic content access. I've created a thread that will give more instructions about the stats command. So I'll click over here, and you can see this is a totally different thread with another set of messages. Super cool. This gives me the ability to create all sorts of like little subunits of the discussion and weave them together as I see fit. But how am I going to weave them together in this specific instance? What I'd really like to do is be able to say, help stats and get directly to the stats help. So luckily, Botkit provides a method for doing that fairly easily. I'm going to go here into my glitch code editor and find the help skill. And in this skill, we use a component of the Botkit SDK called the before hook. So controller.studio.before. This is a function that will allow you to tap into the moment before Botkit Studio starts to run a script, right? So in this case, we're going to tap into the help script, and it's just going to run this function when that happens, every single time the help script happens. So in this case, I'm doing something really simple. I'm looking at the source message text, right? What did the user originally say? And if they said help and then something else, I'm going to take that something else and use the goToThread function to switch to that thread, right? So I'm extracting a parameter out of the original message and using that to change the path that my bot followed through the conversation. So in this case, I'm going to say help stats. have a stats command. So that little piece of code, really 5 or 6 lines of code all told, enabled us to now take a parameter, pass it through to the conversation, and alter the path of that conversation. So that's super, super cool. And I think you can start seeing how conversations can be woven together using these threads to create like fairly open-ended and dynamic paths through your conversation. So I'm going to do one more quick little piece of demo on this piece, and then we'll continue on to another example. Everybody knows that nobody really wants to use command line interfaces, or that command line interfaces are not always the ideal experience for this kind of thing. So asking somebody to know that they can say help stats is not something that we can do without some concern. So we have a solution for that. You'll see that in these attachments I've added a button, and Botkit Studio has a special plugin that allows you to make buttons that have sort of pre-built behaviors that you can use in any script. One of those button macros is a say button. And what that does, and this is what I've done in all of these buttons. So what that does is if you name your button say, when the user clicks it, Botkit will interpret it as if the user had typed or responded with a typed message that is the value of that button. So in this case, when I click further help on the stats attachment, Botkit is going to interpret that as me saying help stats. Down here, it's gonna if I click the help button, it will interpret that as saying help count, etc. You can set up buttons to say anything, including dynamic values. So let's take a look at what that looks like in Slack. I'm going to tell Xenomorph again, help. I'm going to get my default thread, and then when I click further help, 2 things happen. First, the message that included the buttons is updated, and instead of the buttons, I will now have a message that indicates that I said help stats. And then the bot will act just as if I had said help stats and continue with the help stats command. So now the user didn't have to even type anything, and they were able to continue navigating through the help. These additional buttons can also be set up to be say buttons, and I believe I've done that. Yes. So now I can say main menu and navigate my way back to the original menu. Right? So again, no typing necessary, no code necessary, but now I have this open-ended navigation path for the user to explore, to find help, and I can even, if I wanted to, trigger these commands using say buttons directly from the help file. So instead of navigating to a sub-command, I can navigate to a completely different command. So that opens up a lot of really interesting potential, we think, for creating these kind of experiences and controlling those kind of experiences. One of the things I talk to people a lot about is, why would you want Botkit Studio to be powering a help system or powering your onboarding, your channel join messages? Well, in our experience, those are the kind of elements that in your bot that change a lot. You're adding new features to your bot. You're changing the way your bot works. You're finding out that people have confusion at certain points of your bot. You're needing to answer new questions. Having a content management system behind your bot allows you to add content, change that content, and adapt that content as your bot is used by real users. All right, so that is a simple use of the script and dialogue editor in Botkit Studio. And we've shown a little bit about how you can use the before hook to change the way the script operates. Now I'm going to show another example using Botkit Studio's built-in conditional system, which allows you to do some of that navigational control without writing any code and define it all dynamically in the UI. So I'm going to start a brand new script. We're just going to call this yes or no. and this script is going to just ask a yes or no question. So in my default script here, I'm going to just start right away by asking a yes or no question. And I don't have a great question in mind, so I'm just going to say, here is a question for you, colon, yes or no. Okay, so now I want to actually capture the user's response to that question and do something useful. So I'm going to click this capture user's typed response. Boop. And you'll see that over here in the editor, now a visual representation of the user's response appears in the dialog chain. And I can now click through to modify the response's properties. So the first option I have is a variable name. Each script comes with a couple of pre-built sample variables, but you can add a custom variable into which this response will be captured. So I'm going to rename this to user answer. So you can see here the user's response is stored in user answer. And now, so let's just do that actually. I'm going to save this command and go over to Slack and try this out. Here is a question for you. Yes or no? No. Okay, so that worked, but it didn't really do anything. We want that question to actually have an impact on the discussion. So let's go back to Botkit Studio here, and now we're going to add conditional actions. So conditional actions are ways that you can match or do comparisons against the user's response in a couple of different ways, and then take actions based on what that response was. So let's just set up a very simple example. If the user says yes, then we're going to go to a new thread. And we're going to create a thread here called the yes thread. And if the user says no, we're going to go to a new thread as well, the no thread. Okay? And now that we've set up a yes or no path, what happens if the user doesn't say either yes or no? Well, we can have it repeat the message. Okay? So let's save that and move back to Slack. And we'll try this again. So I'm just going to start by not saying yes or no. And you'll see, okay, it didn't like that. It repeated the question. So now let's say yes. So I said yes, and magically it transferred me over to the yes thread, which currently just says yes. Hooray. And we'll go to customize the no thread. Too bad. All right, so let's do this one more time. No. Too bad. Cool. So one of the things you'll notice here is that I didn't add any code or didn't restart my bot when I created that script or made those changes. Because this is all powered by our API, even though the application is running on my own hardware and it is my custom code behind the scenes, I didn't need to make any changes to add that kind of functionality. So there's all sorts of different things that you can do with conditionals. Let me go back here. Not only can you do exact matches, but you can do regular expression matches. And you can also use the built-in utterances that come with Botkit to sort of match things that are variations of yes or no. So I'm going to switch to that, and I'll show you really quick what that looks like. Sure. Yay! So I didn't have to say yes or specifically yes or no. I could just say sure or nope, things like that. And then one of the really, really cool things is that you can actually add conditions here that if your data is validatable with a regular expression, you can use conditions to actually validate that data. So you can put in a regular expression that checks for the inclusion of the word yes or no, things like that. Super, super, super cool. So obviously, it's handy to be able to have a branching pattern like this based on conditionals in your in the content that doesn't require code, but we still probably want this script to result in some sort of action taken by your bot in the back end. So one of the things that that I'd like to demonstrate here, or just point out, is that threads can end. Your conversation can end in a variety of states. So let's imagine that in this script, we're gonna reboot the server, right? If the user says no, we clearly do not want to reboot the server, right? But if the user says yes, we do. So you'll notice down at the end of the thread here, there is a clause that says, and then stop mark successful. So if I click that, I get an option to change what will happen when the script reaches this point. And for the yes thread, we're going to leave it as end mark successful. But for the no thread, we're going to say, let's end that, but mark it failed. Now, in my code, I'm going to be able to test what the end status of the conversation was. Again, you guys are familiar with Botkit, so you know that there's a convo.status field. There's also a convo.successful function, which will tell you whether or not the script ended in a success. So there, you can see a way for you to use the conditional statements alongside the threads to create like a branching conversation that has some little elements of dynamic functionality. All right. So I'm going to do one more quick demonstration, and then we'll call it a day for today. Thank you guys so much again for participating in this, and I hope that you are following along and getting a lot out of this. So the last example I'm going to talk about is the need for the bot to sort of take the results of conversation and store those into a database on the back end. We are actually going to publish a Medium article that uses this demonstration as well, so you'll be able to find this online after the presentation, and we'll link it in the comments. So in this instance, I'm going to create, I've created like a sample user profile generation script or capture script. You can imagine that this would be used on something like a new bot application during its onboarding. Like you're going to build a profile of each user by asking them a couple of questions. Another scenario that we see this kind of pattern is in like the onboarding. When a new user joins a team, you're going to like build a little profile about them so that you can display that information either in their Slack profile or on a website or whatever. So I have a script in my Botkit account called create profile. And in this script, I have a couple of threads. The first one does just what I did in that last example. It says, would you like to set up your profile? And if I say yes, it goes to the questions thread. And if I say no or quit, it will stop immediately. So if the user says yes, it goes on to the questions thread. Let's take a look at that thread. Now, in this questions thread, I have a couple of questions. First one is, what is your email address? It's going to be stored in a variable called email. The second one is, what is your t-shirt size? That's going to be stored in a variable called t-shirt. And then the third one is, what is your favorite color? That's going to be stored in the variable called color. You'll see this last message here, it's actually making a back reference to that answer. So after I say, what's my favorite color? Blue, it'll say, oh cool, blue's my favorite color too. So you can do that kind of stuff. So let's walk through this in Slack. Let's see, what triggers have I set up? My account, my profile. So if I say, oops, my profile, it's going to trigger that script. Would you like to set up your profile now? Yes, I would. What is your email address? So, as I was just mentioning, we've been clever in this instance and used conditional, that is a regular expression. Whoa, this is just like a simple regular expression. Haha, simple regular expression. A regular expression that will check to see if the answer contains a valid email address and only allow the user to continue if that is the case. So let's just demonstrate that. Here, foo, that is not a real email address, but ben@howdy.ai is. Cool. So I didn't have to write any code. Botkit just did that because of the regular expression that I provided as a conditional. Now it asks me what my t-shirt size is. I could say small, medium, or large, but because I've set up say buttons on this question, just like I showed in the last example, I can just click a button instead. Oh, Ben Brown said large. And then I can say my favorite color. It is pink. Cool, pink is my favorite color too. Okay, now your profile is up to date. So how did I actually update my profile? Let's take a look at what is happening in the code. I'm going to switch over here and look for my profile join. Oops, I didn't put that in this thing. Hold on, very, very quickly. I will get this off of GitHub. Here we go. And so in this case, we are going to use another one of Studio's built-in functions, controller.studio.after. Instead of running before a conversation happens, this happens at the end of the conversation. Fairly straightforward. Same kind of thing. We're going to name the script that we want to tap into, and a callback function is going to call when that conversation ends. And so, as I was just saying, we first check to see if the conversation was successful. That means that it reached the end of a conversation thread and was marked as successful. And then we're going to use the extract responses function of the conversation to pull out an object that contains all of the profile data that was just provided by the user. So you can see here in this code sample, it's going to get back an object that basically looks like this. You know, there's a field called email, there's a field called color, and there's a field called t-shirt. And each one of those is going to contain the response that the user had. Then we're going to use the built-in Botkit storage system to pull the user record, if it exists, out of the current database. And if it doesn't exist, create it. But regardless, set the user profile to that new profile data object. And then just stash it right back into the database. So all that you really need to do, because by the time you've reached the end of a successful conversation, you know that all of these fields are filled out, and you know that they've been validated to whatever extent they need to be validated by the front end. You can now just write the code to actually store that information directly into the database. And obviously, this is using Botkit's built-in storage, but you could use any sort of database layer to store your data in this this hook. So there you go. Now you've seen the use of a Botkit Studio script that doesn't have any code. You've seen a script that uses the before hook to change the behavior of a script as it begins, and you've seen code that will take the results of a conversation and do something with them. I hope that that gives you some tools for building your own bot, and that Botkit Studio can make the process of building a fun and useful bot for you, your team, or your company a lot easier than it would have been otherwise. We would love to hear from you. Please join our community at community.botkit.ai. You can find me and my teammates in the Botkit channel there almost 24 hours a day, ready to ask or answer your questions. And we will also be following up with a couple of posts on Medium that will talk about the examples I just demonstrated, as well as a few others. Once again, thank you guys so much. And now, if there are any questions that have been sent, I would be happy to answer them. Eric, is there anything I can?
Any questions today?
There are no questions.
So you can kill it at your.
Okay, great. Well, once again, thank you, everybody. I hope that this was as fun for you as it was for Eric. And we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.